war in Europe. So let's get more on this. Peter McKay joins us now live. He, of course, has held many roles in the Conservative government, including former Foreign Affairs Minister. Peter, thanks again for being here on CP24 Breakfast. How do you assess the situation now? We now have people clearly, we're talking about war in Europe. Russia has invaded Ukraine. But Vladimir Putin, Peter, is suggesting this was because of a threat coming from Ukraine.
Well, that is complete misinformation and an attempt to justify what is an illegal and unjustified aggression. Hearing Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, talking of this in historic terms, a war on the continent of Europe, I think we will look back at this moment, Nick, and remember it for the rest of our lives. This has enormous and sobering potential to break out into a much larger conflict. Previous speakers, commentators have noted that Poland could be in the sights of Vladimir Putin. Obviously, Belarus has been a cooperative country with them, but this appears to be part of a megalomaniacal attempt to recreate the Soviet Union. Vladimir Putin sees himself as somehow a man of destiny, a strong man, somebody who believes that Russia has not been given the respect that it deserves as a superpower. Well, the world is going to have to respond in very serious terms with consequences, not only in sanctions, but potentially militarily. And that's what's being discussed in Brussels at the emergency NATO meeting. And I suspect it'll be discussed in the capitals of all Western countries. Yeah,
we know the G7 are meeting virtually this morning to discuss that. You mentioned, Vladimir Putin, sees himself as a strong man, but he's also very isolated as well. But the flip side to that is, while he is strong, he also doesn't appear to care or give a whit about what the United Nations says, what Western democracies say, or even about the threat of sanctions. So how much of a concern is that when the person you're trying to counter doesn't really care what you do?
Well, it's psychopathic. This is the problem with trying to thwart the efforts of the Russian mafia, and the state and the mafia are in close cooperation. They don't value human life. As you said, the sanctions have had very little impact, although they will over time in terms of the Russian economy. But Vladimir Putin is on a mission. And all of these efforts, diplomatically and otherwise, have not deterred the actions that we're seeing now, the violence that is being perpetrated on the people of Ukraine. We, as a country, have taken some steps. There's more that can be done. I would suggest that the satellite imagery that we can provide Ukrainians will at least assist them in terms of their defenses and how they respond. And clearly, they need more lethal support to protect their people, to protect their capital. We could see a very long and clearly a very bloody affair unfolding in the coming days.
But of course, Peter, one of the concerns here, or the issues here, is the fact that Ukraine is not part of NATO. Had Ukraine be a part of NATO, we would see NATO responding, effectively now based on what Russia has done. But they are not. And NATO has sort of seemed to not want to sort of fully get involved. Joe Biden has effectively said, America doesn't want to get involved necessarily. We're sending troops, we're sending help, we're sending lethal weapons and that sort of thing. So how do you cobble together this effort to counter Russia when NATO won't kind of be running the show, as it were?
Well, that is the quintessential question, Nick. You know your history. This sounds a little bit like the response in 1939, and you're absolutely right. The Bucharest Conference was an opportunity for NATO to open its doors to what's called the Membership Action Program. I know I was there, and we missed that historic opportunity to our everlasting shame. And so, although NATO has expanded to other countries since, they're now sitting at 30. If this blunder had not occurred, I don't believe that Russia would have crossed that line. There would have been the Article 5 protection that would have dictated that all countries would rally to the defense of Ukraine. We're seeing obviously some hand-wringing now about what a military response looks like. But if this continues and in the coming days they cross into Poland, then Article 5 will, of course, take effect, and all 30 member nations will, by virtue of that article, be part of a conflict against Russia.
So it'll be interesting to see where Russia goes next. Peter McKay, thanks again for joining us, helping us analyze and understand the ongoing situation in Ukraine right now. Thanks again.